This week, we interview Scott Kannry and Jason Christopher from Axio. In our startup news, 5 tough startup lessons, cognitive overhead, the startup fundraising dictionary, Shark Tank money, and the IoT startup niche. Sophos makes an acquisition, Capsula 8's in the news, and Imperva as we round out some of the funding that's happening in the startup world. All that and more on this edition of Startup Security Weekly. This is a Security Weekly production.
I need it from the top.
Brought to you by Gain control of cyber risk with Tenable.io, the first vulnerability management platform built for today's elastic assets like cloud, containers, and web apps. Discover a fresh, asset-based approach that prioritizes vulnerabilities while seamlessly integrating into your environment. Improve ROI with the first elastic licensing approach based on assets, not IP addresses. Tenable.io delivers the data and context you need to secure your elastic attack surface. Start your free Tenable.io trial by visiting Tenable.io. IT Pro TV, an easy, entertaining approach to online IT training. Access over 2,000 hours of up-to-date, high-quality video content live and on demand via Chromecast, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, Apple TV, PC, or your mobile device. IT Pro TV's premium membership grants access to all courses, transcripts, virtual machine labs, and transcender practice exams. Corporate and group pricing are available. For a free 7-day trial and 30% off the life of your account, visit itpro.tv/startup security and use the code SS30. Do you have a website, an external presence, employees, an office? Any of these can be compromised and attacked. How are you defending these assets? Have you penetration tested them? Start 2017 by taking a proactive approach to your vulnerable areas. Black Hills Information Security has been helping companies find their weaknesses since 2008. Email consulting@blackhillsinfosec.com to see how they can help you sleep better at night.
Welcome to Startup Security Weekly. I'm your host, Paul Asadorian, broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island for Friday, February 17th, 2017. This is the brown liquor edition, apparently. We just dubbed it before the show. The beach bum himself is on the lines via Skype. Michael Santarcangelo, welcome.
Thank you. I feel like I haven't seen you in forever, Paul.
It was just last night. Yeah, it was weird. Michael and I did Paul Security Weekly together. It was weird.
Yeah. And we did a setup for today's show. We got on a good roll talking about insurance. So today we'll actually bring some experts in to educate us. It'll be good.
Awesome. Before we get into our interview, just a couple of quick announcements. Register today for our latest webcast, Finding Bad Things on Your Network Using Free and Open Source Security Tools, on Thursday, February 23rd, 2:15 to 3:15 Eastern Time. That's PM, by the way. Presented by none other than John Strand. John will uncover some secrets and talk about a free tool for threat hunting called Rita. Logarithm is our sponsor and will provide a demo of Netmon Freemium. Sign up today by visiting securityweekly.com/hunting. IT Pro TV's even upcoming courses include Cybersecurity Analyst Plus, CCNA Cyber Ops, ITIL Operation Support and Analysis, Penetration Testing, Ethical Hacking V9. IT Pro is introducing a new membership level soon. All current premium members will be granted the highest membership level available, so sign up today at itpro.tv/startup security and use the code SS30. Couple of conferences coming up that we'll be at: InfoSec World on April 3rd through the 5th in Orlando, Florida. Tons of great talks, and Security Weekly listeners get a 10% off discount by using the code OS17-SW. Find out more at infosecworld.misty.com. That's MISTI.com. Attend Source Boston. It's kind of like the stripper name. I think of it. That's how I remember to spell it. Maybe that's just me. Attend Source Boston on April 24th through the 27th for Catherine's going to kill me. For training and awesome talks, use the code Security Weekly for $100 off either the conference ticket or one of the trainings. Find out more at sourceconference.com. Michael's laughing. Catherine she is going to murder me when she sees me for that comment.
Yes.
But we got to keep the announcements lively. You know what I mean? So, Michael, why don't you go ahead and introduce our special guests for today, who have already, not that it took much convincing, have convinced me at least to drink some brown liquor. So, cheers.
Paul, cheers.
It's past noon. We're good.
We've mitigated the risk of it. So one of the things we always talk about in security is looking at insurance. So what was absolutely perfect for this program is Scott and Jason are joining us from Axio. And I'll let them tell us more about their company, but it's neat because they're right at the intersection, that nexus of looking at cybersecurity, looking at insurance, looking at the way that businesses handle it in terms of their total risk profile. And so I've had the pleasure now to talk to them a couple of times, and I get more and more energized with each of the conversations. So if anybody caught the show last night where Paul and I were talking about insurance, now we have some folks here. But what's great is we can talk, they're startups, so we can talk about what it's like to be a startup.
You guys are insurance salesmen? Is that what you're telling me?
No. Nor would we want to be.
I was going to say you're like the coolest insurance salesman ever at this point, at this juncture. If you,
we're folks that appreciate the value of the insurance industry, as we will talk about.
Okay.
But we're agnostic to what you actually do from an insurance standpoint. So the outcome of what we do is, I'm sure we'll get into, is not buy this insurance policy or that insurance policy. It's more, we recognize that an insurance product, being a financial risk transfer instrument, should have value within a CISOR's portfolio. And we have a realistic and I think appropriate view of it to help propagate the notion that the insurance industry can actually really, really be helpful to solve this problem.
So start by giving us a little bit about your backgrounds.
Sure, I'll start, and Jason, take it over from me. I am an insurance guy through and through. Spent most of my career prior to joining the Axio gang almost 2 years ago at Aon, one of the largest insurance brokers. I had the benefit or the good fortune of being on the team at Aon that sold the product the insurance industry calls cyber insurance. But along the way, I recognized that far too often folks in the insurance industry equate cyber risk with privacy and data breach risk. And as we all know, there's far much more to it than that. So as the product trajectory took hold, as the insurance industry kind of evolved and continued to refine or roll out new products, the recognition hit me pretty squarely a couple of years ago that, wait a second, cyber's not synonymous with privacy or data. Cyber's actually a peril that can cause really any type of financial to tangible damage that can affect both the person that buys the insurance policy as well as their clients, customers, third parties, et cetera. And therefore, if you look at a commercial enterprise, north of 10 to 12 to 15 to potentially 20, depending on the industry, types of insurance policies can actually be impacted by the peril of cyber or a technology failure or whatever you'd equate it to, and therefore it's a game-changing risk phenomenon. So how does the insurance industry capture that recognition? Start to understand and bake in this whole notion that cyber is just a cross-spectrum or cross-boundary risk, and therefore start to understand it, treat it, manage it, etc. So, in short thrift,
I like how you use the word peril. We have to manage.
It is a peril.
It's very peril.
It's perilous.
It's really funny on that note because I'm not an insurance guy, and the first time that Scott used that term, cyber is a peril, he's using it in a term of art that insurance guys use, and as a security guy, I was like, yeah, cyber is very perilous.
Right, we have lots of peril. I can tell you about all kinds of peril.
It is so much peril. Why? And he would say, well, people don't understand it's a peril. I'm like, no, it's. I'm with you. It's totally
I live in the peril. Yes.
And then when Scott described it as the way that insurance folks use that terminology to discuss, natural disasters and other things that would be considered an actual peril, a classification of risk. It's like, it's a term of art. It's not perils. Perils are bad. Yes, I agree.
Yes. I'm going to use that in my present. I'm going to try and work that word into my presentations now. I think it's awesome.
And that's P-I... I'm sorry. P-E-R-I-L.
P-E-R. Peril.
I-L. Peril. Like an earthquake, like a windstorm, like a hurricane, like a flood, like fire.
Like the Monty Python? Like the Monty Python movie? They use the word peril in the Monty Python. There's a whole skit in the Monty Python Holy Grail movie about peril. Yeah.
Yes.
I'll find the YouTube clip.
Probably. Yeah, probably.
Michael.
So anyway.
Michael, you want to... I'm just goofing off, Michael. If you ever want to reel the reins in on me and
well,
it's serious questions, because I'm going to start asking about Scotch next, so you better start talking.
I'm kind of enjoying it. Well, so what's neat is there's so many different directions we can go here. I actually want to pick up where you and I were talking last night, because one of the first things I learned talking to Scott is this whole notion of maritime risk about a century ago, and how we all thought we were doomed and it was all done, and we kind of rounded the horn, maybe I should say, as a preview, and I think that bodes well for us. So maybe as a way to look at it, there seems to be some contention. So when we talk about insurance, there's a lot of people in security that are like, fine, if I'm on the other side, I think this is going to drive change for us. Scott, when you look at it, what's the story you like to tell? Let's start on a positive note about how we might address some of this, and then we can dig into specifics after that.
Yeah, it's all positive. The insurance industry solves risk. Simple as that. The insurance industry's primary function and role is to understand, embrace, and solve risk. It's done it time and time again for grand risk challenges, of historical recognition. Maritime being the best one. 350 years ago, right before any of us were born, I think. Paul, you look a little bit older than Michael and Jason.
But yeah, Jack. Daniel could definitely account.
Yeah, Jack was there.
Yeah, his kids might have been there. That's
So probably, Jack Daniel's kids, but 350 years ago, when his kids were teenagers, I think, it was a dubious proposition to be part of a seagoing voyage, to construct a ship, to finance some type of a trade voyage, or whatever you want to call it, because pirates on the high seas. Who knows what weather patterns dictated, and nobody truly knew where they were going. But a bunch of folks in London got together at a coffee shop, and the Edward Lloyd's coffee shop, and started to capture, as I call it, the information potential or the analytics potential of the insurance industry. Meaning, what makeup or construction of ship stands the test of time? What are the routes that we have to go on? What does the navigational calendar and star cluster and whatnot say? Where should we pay for lighthouses? Fast forward 350 years, there's still pirates. Shipwrecks still happen, right? But nobody would equate maritime risk as they equate cyber risk being unsolvable. Yes, shipwrecks still happen. Yes, pirates are still out there. Sometimes they actually achieve success in their own mind, but the risk has been managed. And that's why I am a fundamental through and through believer that the insurance industry, if it realizes its potential to understand and manage cyber risk, can solve it from we understand it, we help folks manage it, we help incent good behavior. And, when bad things actually happen, we're going to give you a financial recoverable, or we're going to give you a pool of money through the function of an insurance policy to weather the storm and emerge whole. And maritime's not the only example. There's umpteen others, but that's really the potential of the insurance industry to, as we say, it's our tagline, to solve cyber risk. Simple as that.
One of the things.
My opposition to that, just to play devil's advocate, is that as security professionals, we often think that, and I don't want to speak for everyone, right? But this is a viewpoint that if I have cyber insurance, I don't have to secure my network because I have insurance. And then to build on that, yes, I have cyber insurance, and now I'm required to meet certain standards. And once I meet those certain standards, now I also think I'm done because I have insurance and I've met standards like maybe PCI or some ISO standard. And I think that that's security, and that's the concern from security professionals. And we're like, yeah, but that really doesn't protect you. Like, you can do better.
Mostly false. I mean, there's a little bit of truth to what you just talked about, but generally speaking, if you look at the cadre of products that are currently available, and granted, it's a limited subset. I mean, if you look at the availability of insurance products relative to the spectrum of cyber risk, it's still limited, but it's quickly evolving. The whole notion of having to meet certain standards or abide by certain requirements, there are vestiges where, sure, that might be baked into the policy, like PCI, for example. If you buy an insurance policy that will cover PCI fines and penalties, there's the expectation going in that you have met the current compliance test for the framework, and therefore that's why you qualify for the coverage and so forth. But the dubious notion that you need to abide by some amorphous kind of threshold of security, that was in place a dozen, maybe a few less, but really in the early days of the cyber insurance products that have all largely gone by the wayside. So if you look at the success of the products relative to that, I can tell you with confidence, and we're fortunate to have a relationship with one of the biggest and best cyber insurance providers in the world. They'll pay 99.9% of the time, absent those types of caveats. The other kicker is that one of the things, and it's separate and apart from the products, is that yes, there's a risk transfer element to it, and yes, if you're a company, one of the primary drivers of even considering insurance is that you can transfer the financial risk, the financial wherewithal, the loss or whatever of the event. But what's largely untapped, and what I'm talking about, back to the maritime analogy, is that if you think about it, the insurance industry is in a really, really privileged position when it comes to understanding and evaluating risk. Through the process of underwriting insurance contracts, it looks at risk management practices, right? What you're doing, what you're not doing, what's the control set that you've deployed, et cetera. And then it correlates that with the claims that are being paid, the losses that are being noticed, where are the deficiencies, and if it does realize its potential, meaning the insurance industry, then it's not what's the least common denominator set of questions or applications that we need to ask for in order to achieve an insurance policy. It's let's have a collaborative discussion on what you're doing, what you're not doing, what you could be doing, what you might be doing, all kind of caveated by this. Well, here's what we can do from a coverage and a premium standpoint. And Paul, if I come to you, theoretically at your insurance renewal next year and say, I think you're running a great shop, and I'm going to give you credit for that. And here's a little bit of premium reduction that I can help you sell to your bosses to tell you that you're doing a great job. And by the way, given what you do and what your organization's made of, here's where we've been seeing some of the loss trends and the exposure trends and so forth. And you don't have to do these things, but if you do them, I'm going to give you a little bit better coverage. And if you don't do them, well, because that's increasing on our risk register, I might have to charge you a little bit more. But by the way, you're actually doing a damn good job, and I'll give you validation for that. Well, now you've got insight and validation to go to whoever you report to, go to the board and say, you know what, we're doing a good job, but here's what the insurance industry suggests that we do to keep pace with the expanding risk climate.
Right, and I think that the devil sometimes is in the details and the level of verification, and I liken that to my home insurance as an example. They may say, hey, you get a break if you put a security system in, but my security system is very poorly designed, and by the way, it's not connected to the police department, and I'm not, ever turning on my security system, but I still get a break on my insurance. I'm still playing devil's advocate, so... in case you were wondering.
No, it's good. No,
If you're playing along at home.
Well, that's what, in full candor, that's the reality that we're hoping to achieve, and that by partnering with top insurance companies and creating a business and a model that can help the insurance industry achieve the potential that we believe it can achieve. Absolutely, that's the reality that we want to codify and offer to security professionals, to equate with what's very much available to tangible property managers and building engineers and people that are tasked with maintaining the security and fidelity of pipelines and multi-billion-dollar manufacturing facilities and just typical offices and so forth. That reality has not yet been achieved, largely based on my previous point that to date, and it's starting to take hold. We're far better now than we were even a couple years ago, in recognizing that a cyber event, or even just call it a technology failure, is a peril, right? And as when you look at it that way, it can impact the entire risk spectrum. It can impact 12 to 15 to 20 different lines of insurance. If you look at a big corporation and you aggregate that's tens of millions of dollars of insurance premium that, when you bake in the notion that cyber is a peril and technology failure is a peril, and you achieve that potential that I talked about, can actually result in meaningful, trade-off dynamics that are very readily available in the other lines of coverage. But that, because we haven't gotten there yet, and because the products that the insurance industry offers to cover what it believes is cyber risk, which is, like I said, evolving and moving in the right direction, but generally speaking is limited relative to the entire cyber risk spectrum, can't support that type of dynamic yet. We'll get there.
What I think is also important too is that it can help security, right? Is it's a multi-tiered thing, right? Like, yes, I have an alarm system. Yes, hey, I have some procedures that talk about how I use my alarm system, and then even building on that and saying, well, if the insurance company is asking the question, hey, in your procedures, are you covering X, Y, and Z? I mean, incident response is a similar kind of thing, right? Like, hey, do you have an incident response program? Well, yes. Okay, where's the documentation? Well, here it is. Okay, does it contain these things? That going down that path to the third step, I think really helps, one, raise awareness, and two, if it's the right things, helps organizations improve their security. It makes the world a better place, like we strive to do and all the startups do in the security world.
That's exactly what we're talking about. We agree. I mean, that's exactly right. That's the informational potential or analytics potential of the insurance industry. We really are striving for a world where, if the insurance industry captures all of that potential and has the ability to truly underwrite and truly correlate what it evaluates versus behavior, it can create that dynamic where the rising tide captures all boats. Agreed 100%.
Yeah, and I think there's some subtleties in this too that kind of get me excited, which is we start looking at real evidence. So, I always like to ask the question, where's the harm? Peril, the industry is actually going to start looking at that. And I think what I just picked up listening, unless I misunderstood it too, is that the early products may have tied specific actions to it because that's what they knew how to do. But as you get better data and better chance to look at where the real peril is and how the process works, you can do less and less of that, because then I don't even need to worry too much about what you tell me necessarily, because I can learn enough about your habits and behaviors and patterns and industry and size and everything else. I know because I've already got the data. Is that a fair way to look at it?
It's a fair way to look at it, and it also exemplifies one of the challenges with respect to the insurance industry, because typically speaking, the insurance industry creates new products and rolls out pricing models or develops pricing models based on historical data. And that's why if you look at the evolution of what the insurance industry calls cyber insurance products, most of them have been centered on data breach risk and privacy risk and so forth. because since 2003, there's been a major cadre of state regulations in place that require firms to notify incur costs, et cetera, when it comes to PII and Social Security and credit card breaches. What that doesn't contemplate is everything else that can go wrong from a cyber or a technology standpoint. But the reality is that if you work with firms, and this is what we kind of do day in and day out, and you flesh out what their exposures are and what could go wrong, and bring in information from other areas of risk, and just kind of flesh out organizational insight and institutional insight and so forth on a client-by-client basis, and even in aggregate form, if you start to build things into a database and develop industry trends and so forth, we live it and we breathe it. You can come up with reasonable and realistic exposure models for really the entire spectrum of cyber risk for any industry. And if that information can then be shared and codified and collaborated with insurance carriers to stretch and evolve the product boundary, well, then you can start to actually develop the type of exposure models and loss models and risk models that the insurance industry needs to develop. The product set that we believe is required.
Yeah, and that's actually a good pivot, because I do want to explore some of the startup in the business that you guys run. So you're kind of sitting between the two, and if I just heard you right, then you have an ability to help businesses better understand the cyber insurance packages and policies that are available, but then also help the industry better understand so they can design things, and basically you can accelerate some of the growth and some of the opportunities. Is that right?
That's absolutely fair. Yeah, our business is very squarely at the nexus of the insurance industry and just call it industry. We believe that in order to solve this problem, fundamentally and first and foremost from an end user standpoint, firms, meaning end users, who whatever the DNA of the company is and whatever industry it is, it needs to take a holistic view and achieve a holistic understanding of its cyber risk. What's the potential outcome if something goes wrong? What's the control set that we could potentially deploy? The reality now, for most people anyway, hopefully all four of us, is that there's no single silver bullet in any category: technology, insurance, policy, procedure, you name it. But rather, the best solution to the problem is a better accumulation of all the controls and, you name it, technologies, policies, procedures, et cetera, that are available at your disposal, continually monitored and evolved in a dynamic nature. And when you better put that all together, integrate things, ideally further achieve a collaborative dialogue with the insurance industry, then we can drive forward towards achieving the potential that I've talked about.
And I'd drive that point a little bit further, because a lot of the times when we talk about cybersecurity insurance, when I deal with CISOs coming from a security background, they view it as a headache or an activity not worthwhile, right? You get on a phone for maybe an hour every year or so, because your risk manager who's buying the product says you should sit down on this call, and you have somebody who's maybe a very earnest person, but a 20-something-year-old who's maybe never done anything in systems engineering, sysadmin role, to say, hey, I've got these 5 questions, and with these 5 questions, I'm totally going to understand all of your risk. And so try and talk to a CISO and actually telling them, by the way, this product that you're spending an hour on could potentially get you a forensics firm on site within 24 hours to help you with incident response and recovery with a check in hand. What's the average cost now? Like FireEye said for incident, like $800,000 or something like that. Nobody has it in a rainy day fund. And if you don't have a incident response firm on retainer, you're not going to suddenly have that money. But the insurance product, if appropriately addressing your risk, would. So bridging that gap to the CISO is one thing, and then on the other side, when I talk to risk managers as a security guy, and I say, "Hey, I already know that you're buying a product. How would you like to know that you're actually not buying a product that takes care of your risk?" I come from an industrial control system background, and your products are all based off of, as Scott said, data breach and recovery. That has nothing to do with what I care about in industrial control systems, right? I want to keep the lights on, keep the gas flowing. If somebody took some credit cards, is it a bad day for my company? Sure. Is it a bad day for me? Lights are still on. We're okay. But there are products that cover that, and the guy who bought the insurance may not have bought the right package for what your independent risk is. So that bridge that Michael was talking about, that's where it really makes our clients and the folks that we talk to on both sides of the fence get together.
What, Michael, I want to flip the conversation around and talk about product companies in security, and it's the opposite thing, right? Like, I'm not an organization trying to protect assets. I am, but then my business is I'm creating security products. What types of insurance are available to me, and specifically, what advice do you have for startups who are making security software products?
Okay, I'll start with that. So really, when you talk about the cybersecurity risk space, where we have a tool that we use talking about the quadrants of risks. So there's first and third party risks that you have to deal with. And that's first and third party financial risks and first and third party tangible risks. So physical damage that may come as a result. If you are a security vendor and you're actually looking to buy insurance, you want to make sure that you are able to cover not only your risks from the incident that you may have, that impact just your day-to-day operations, but also those risks that would cover your third party, your customers. And there are insurance products there that do cover that range of risk. But unfortunately, it means that you have to either sit down with a risk manager or a broker that you trust, or get really, really good at reading really, really dense insurance language. And Scott is a pro at that. So Scott, I don't know if you would want to talk more about the individual policies that people have to look in place, because there's not just like one cyber policy, right? When you talk about covering cyber risk, you're talking about looking at directors and officers policy, kidnap and ransom policies. It's not just, I've got a cyber security policy and I'm therefore covered. It's a myriad of different products that you'd unfortunately really have to pay attention to if you want to make sure that you've covered that third party risk to your customers in an adequate fashion.
Right, and it's not, unfortunate. It's just it's the way that the insurance industry works, right? The insurance industry to date buckets and silos different categories of risk because that's how it understands and models and underwrites different categories of risk. But Paul, to your point, is a provider of a discrete product or a niche product, et cetera, that presumably caters to commercial customers, you can very robustly cover that resulting liability or the potential for resulting liability if your products don't work. What was I going to say? It needs to be done right because there's a lot of complexity to the technology world and what you might be doing. Then there's the reality that hopefully you include contractual liabilities within your contracts, but maybe you offer liquidated damages clauses. Maybe you'd like as a business accommodation to offer, some type of fund if what you do doesn't work as advertised. But generally speaking, that type of risk is very much insurable. I mean, it's basically, well, the industry term is professional liability. It's no different in the modern era than if you look historically. The professional liability associated with doctors, lawyers, and accountants. You failed in your professional duty. Somebody depended on you for the service or the offering that you provided. It didn't work as intended. They've suffered the consequences. They are holding you responsible. So that's very much achievable, and there's a robust marketplace for that. But once again, going to the theme that we've talked about in a couple instances, the notion that cyber risk can impact the entire spectrum of risk, the notion that cyber is a peril, requires that when you look at the exposure resulting from a cyber event or a technology failure, it's not a single policy that you look at, but rather it's all of your commercial insurance. And it's really not a difficult process. It's just a new way of thinking given the world that we live in.
So I have a question then directly related to that. One of the things, maybe it's just a youthful optimism on my part, but I keep looking at some of the challenges where we think it's just dire, and I go, give it a chance. We're going to catch up. But when you look at some of these things now that we've got hundreds of years of looking at how insurance affected it and shaped the marketplace, where would you guys say, based on your experience, both looking at security, Jason, from your background, and insurance, Scott, from your background, are we early in these stages still when it comes to using cyber as a peril that cuts across everything? And then based historically, is this something that we'll see really positive gains? Are we looking at 5 years, 10 years, 20 years? Like, I know prognosticating into the future is always dangerous, but it's a Friday and we're enjoying brown liquors. What would you say?
Jason, go ahead if you want to take a crack at it first. I know.
So I would say that we are in the early stages. And I say that because of the state of cybersecurity today. When we talk about the protections that you got in place for maritime risk, another good example is fire, right? Why do I have a sprinkler system throughout my house? Because insurance really helped drive that. So in those conversations, we need to get to the point where our industry is having a more robust I'm going to use the term information sharing because it does need to happen, right? But what are the things that are working? What are the things that aren't working? And how do we then quantify that? Unfortunately, our sector is going through and having conversation of risk as red, yellows, and greens, and high, medium, and lows. And the folks who are taking care of the financial risks are having like Dow Jones Industrial type of graphs and charts to be able to discuss what the next quarter looks like. The CISO and the CISO equivalents aren't there yet. We're not able to have that robust conversation about risk management. And so it's really difficult to then say that insurance is going to pick up any slack on that just because we don't have that information right now. I think we're getting a lot better with it, but until we get to the point where we are like the CFO going to the board meeting to be able to have that conversation, it's not about how many patches we've done, or even if you're doing some really good metrics like mean time to fix and things like that. It's still not on the same stratosphere as what other people who are talking about risk within the organization are talking about it. Risk has to equal risk, right? If you're talking about cyber risk, what does that mean in terms of financial risk? What does it mean in terms of operational risk? And we're early stages, and it's positive and it's good. But for insurance to pick up the slack on that, we need to mature with our metrics and with our information sharing across the industry.
So here's my viewpoint, which I think is entirely complementary with what Jason just said. If you look at the insurance industry and how it's operated, yes, most of the models and the product development and the pricing metrics, et cetera, have been based on historical data. And that makes sense because as insurance products evolve towards a commodity and evolve towards or achieve scalability. I mean, health insurance or life insurance, for example, there's death tables dating back 250, 300, 350 years, such that generally speaking, you can peg the life of a person, the sex of a person, a couple questions as to their lifestyle and attentiveness to their well-being, and then peg them into when they think that person will expire and what the resulting life insurance payout would be. The same is true of property, generally speaking. I mean, if you look at historical perils like fire, for example, being somewhat predictive versus like earthquakes and hurricanes and whatnot. But that's the status quo. That's how the insurance industry knows how to operate. When you look at cyber, well, you're never going to get ever, that same breadth and depth of historical data. But if you actually have a robust dialogue with a firm and dive deep into what their exposures are and what potentially could happen and so forth, and then complement that with a, well, how mature are you? How well do you think you're doing relative to your threat universe? Based on the technology that you have deployed, like, are you current with your Microsoft Office patches or whatever? Tell me about, how you're patching your industrial control systems and so forth. Not ever getting to the level of scientific specificity that a property insurer or a life insurer could ever get to, but could, on a one-off basis, through that deeper dialogue, you as a potential insurance company can get to, all right, well, okay, here, I know what the exposure is because we've had that discussion. I know kind of relatively where they are in consideration of their risk environment. Here's the price that I'm going to have to put forth to take that risk off their balance sheet and put it on mine. And you know what? It's going to be iterative. And if we miss it this year, then I at least want to know that the partnership's there for next year so that we can kind of get back to the norm. And if I win next year, then maybe we dial it back a little bit. And if I lose the following year, then we'll dial it back or go the other way.
So ultimately, then this is incremental. And I guess the part I hadn't actually considered is what Jason pointed out, which is we're not yet at the level. Like, I guess I've kind of looked at it as insurance companies get involved and start gathering data, we're going to get better data. And what you're kind of pointing out is we're not there yet. But hopefully we'll get there.
Coming from?
Yeah,
right.
That's not all right. That's all right. I see that point. So we've got something to work on. But so this is just like, are we going to start seeing positive? We're seeing positive change. I see positive change. But as insurance continues into this, and we help people understand it better, are we looking at a decade down the road? Are we looking at 20 years down the road? Like, when historically have we seen industries mature, vis-a-vis the insurance products and stuff?
Well,
we don't know yet.
Sometimes when I talk at CISO forums and so forth, they go like, is this going to be available 2 months from now? Oh boy, I hope it's not 10 years. I hope it's not 5 years. I hope it's not 3 years. Fundamentally, if we can put forth and achieve the reality that if there's better collaboration between security leaders and CISOs and firms as far as information sharing with the insurance industry, we can create that reality sooner than later. If the status quo prevails, which is a race to the bottom, a sprint to product execution and not necessarily product efficacy, then we're going to be just stuck in this rut. And I hate to even say that because the insurance industry is working and the products work and the success rate is very, very high, but there's so much ground to be gained. But really, if you look at that informational component and what it takes to achieve everything that we've just been talking about, if the status quo is what's the path of least resistance to achieving insurance products, and how do we dial back underwriting and risk analysis to the bare minimum just so that the insurance company can achieve minimum profitability over the next 5 to 10 years, then there's no chance in us succeeding entirely.
Yeah. To add on to that from the security perspective, again, with the CISO or the risk manager, when we're having the conversation that, I can go to insurer A and answer 300 questions, which would give insurer A a pretty good idea, and maybe not as much as the self-assessment of security would give you. That will give you one type of insurance product. Or I can go to this other guy down here. He's only asking 5 questions. And so if our industry's response is, I only want to answer the 5 questions so I can just get this patch done, I have an insurance product and I'm good to go, then that requires a level of maturity on our end to have that conversation as security practitioners to say, you know what, we probably should have more honest and open conversations with partners, not just, don't take 300 questions and post them online for everybody to see, but with the person who's ideally trying to transfer your risk over to their books. If we have those honest conversations, that provides them with a better visibility as to not only your risk, but also the risk of the entire book that they invest in, which therefore gets us back to that information sharing piece of things. So you're absolutely right, Michael. When I talked about it, was that we don't have the right information, but even if we do, we don't share the right information, which inevitably will stall the insurance market products, just because if they don't have more free giving information from us, then what are they going to use? They're not going to have actuarial tables, as Scott mentioned, even though I think we're all drinking brown liquor during this interview. That would have a different actuarial table value than if we weren't. But that they don't have that, and we're not providing that as an industry for very paranoid right reasons, right? This is where we come from. This is what we do. We don't share that information because it's sensitive.
Yeah, but I'll take it a step further, because a lot of my work is actually focusing on helping people both define their challenges and then talk about, so how are we going to measure it? And I still, it's an area where a lot of people get stuck, because as you pointed out, I could talk about number of attacks, I can talk about number of patches, there's a number of things that I can do, but where, again, I get encouraged is I think as an industry, we're doing more of that. So also what I'm kind of taking from this is that if we figure out better the things that we want to ask, and we are more open about them, at least categorically, with other people, then we can start to approximate some of the stuff better. So it's kind of like one of those, if we want to get better, we have to capture better information and share it. But then there are people like an insurance company or insurance companies that can then aggregate and look at a lot of that information. And then, so it's kind of, as you guys keep saying, there's a partnership to it. So one of the things we like to talk with people about in the program is, what's it like, you guys do services and product, and you're straddling what that's like. So what's that like being part of a company that's, Jason, from your perspective, so you're a security person who's clearly now also learning to be an insurance person, and you guys are doing services and products, and you're in a startup, and you're in cyber, and you're in cyber insurance. So what's that like? I mean, how are you guys keeping your sanity?
It's from my perspective, it's difficult, but it's rewarding, right? So the on the product side of things, we talk a lot about how do you actually do that risk quantification? How do you actually say, I've had an incident? And yes, we can pull up a multitude of different surveys online that say 800,000 or 500,000 or whatever the latest hit number is for saying that I've had a cybersecurity incident, this was going to cost me. What does that actually mean to you? Have you actually quantified your risk? And we have a suite of products that we're working on with our clients to be able to actually give you a dollar value for this type of thing. So when you go to the insurance market, you know what type of product to buy from the insurers. So marrying that up with, we have a pretty aggressive of services side of things. It is difficult because you're talking about one where there's going to be on-site consultants to help you out. There's going to be someone to tutor you through risk management and incident response plans, compared to, well, also this is a subscription service type of thing that we're going to be working on. It is something that you have to take both of those, the brain children within the company, and merge them together and say, how do we create something while simultaneously providing people when people are needed? And we're now, to really talk about it, but we've grown from when I started as employee number 4 earlier this year to now onboarding employee number 11 this week, right? So we are startup phase. We are entirely in the thick of things when it comes to that, and it's been fantastically rewarding in that, I would have to say, because you get to see all those things that in the security industry you're saying, well, you need processes and procedures, you need to be able to write that down and documentation, and now as a young company, like, oh, somebody has to write that document. I guess I have to write that document now. We have to write documents. Right. And so it's been really interesting in that realm of things. And Scott, not to steal from what it's been like on the CEO perspective, but just going from somebody who goes on site to talk about incident response to now having to say, how do we internalize that as a company, has been fantastic. I dumbfounded Scott on that one.
I just didn't know where to take that from there. But, Concur. We really think that, and whatever, this isn't intended to be a the advertorial phase or whatever, but we really have taken the time to understand the market, continued to believe that our value prop, at the nexus of the insurance industry and the cybersecurity industry has merit. We see time and time again that that's true. Build a team that can bridge that gap. The only thing I disagree on is that we're not talking about starting to attack the insurance world. We're not becoming an insurance company. We're not, we collaborate with brokers. We're not competitive to brokers, but believing fundamentally that from a security leader and a CISO's perspective, that an insurance contract or an insurance product, if it's done right and it's appropriately fine-tuned and sculpted and et cetera, can provide the missing link or a missing component to a comprehensive cybersecurity strategy. Well, if the person that makes that decision is the security leader, is the chief information security officer, whatever you want to call them, well, having that conversation and buying or getting them to buy into that value proposition and just gaining the respect and wherewithal that you need to put that forth. Well, that's not me. That's Jason, that's Dave White, and that's Nader Mirvari and the other folks that we brought on board, because they're folks that their entire careers and lives have lived and breathed that world, and they've built the models and so forth that are now saying, yeah, you know what, we really, really need to achieve a partnership and deploy insurance as a strategic control, because there's no such thing as an impenetrable barrier. There's no such thing as a technology silver bullet. So a comprehensive and reasonably construed cybersecurity strategy has to include the wherewithal and the financial ability to recover. And the easiest way to actually achieve that is an insurance product, which is, once again, you got to fine tune it, but it's readily available.
Well, Scott and Jason, we're coming to the top of the hour. I wanted to thank you both for appearing on Startup Security Weekly and giving your thoughts and insights into cyber insurance and lots of great tips for those of us that work for an organization and trying to secure it, and product companies as well, as that's our audience in addition. So thank you both.
Thank you, Paul.
Thanks, Paul.
Michael.
Thanks, Michael. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. Stay tuned. Coming up next, startup news, as well as some acquisitions and funding announcements. So stay tuned. Don't go anywhere.